Have you ever been to a concert where the musician couldn't finish their performance because they were too drunk? From stumbling on stage to forgetting the lyrics, some artists went overboard with partying, leaving fans disappointed and the performance in chaos. In this video, we'll go over 20 musicians who were too drunk to perform. Imagine this scene. On May 16, 1991, at the Ritz in New York, the crowd is buzzing with excitement, eagerly waiting for Guns N' Roses, the bad boys of rock, to hit the stage. The lights dim, and in a moment, Slash steps out, his top hat tilted slightly, his messy hair obscuring most of his face. But as the first chords of Welcome to the Jungle ring out, something strange happens. Slash's fingers glide over the fretboard, but the sound is completely off-key. But the story doesn't end there. As the familiar intro to Sweet Child O' Mine begins, the part that even your grandma could hum along to, Slash continues to struggle. The notes come out all jumbled and out of tune, nowhere near the sharp melody we all know and love. In fact, it's kind of impressive how he ruined it so spectacularly. However, it's undeniable that Slash, even when sloshed, still knows how to work the stage. Sure, this performance wasn't exactly what anyone was hoping for, but it also shows that even a guitar legend like Slash can have his off moments. The most interesting part is that while we're struggling with these songs in Guitar Hero in a perfectly sober state, it's Slash, the guitar master, who butchers them right on stage. It's a reminder that even rock gods are only human, and sometimes those humans are very, very drunk. In 2004, Van Halen, the legendary rock band, began their reunion tour with Sammy Hagar returning as the lead vocalist. It sounded like a winning formula, right? But in reality, it wasn't quite that simple. Sammy Hagar, known as the Red Rocker, had replaced the iconic David Lee Roth many years before. Initially, fans were divided, but Hagar proved his talent. In fact, the band even enjoyed their most commercially successful period with him. However, as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. After an 8-year hiatus, Van Halen and Hagar decided to reunite. However, from the very beginning, things didn't go smoothly. Hagar later described the tour as one of the worst, most scheming, dark experiences I've ever been a part of in my life. Imagine going on a trip with your ex and their entire family. Now multiply that awkwardness by 1,000, and you'll get an idea of what Hagar felt. Throughout the tour, Hagar and Eddie Van Halen, once musical soulmates, barely spoke to each other. But the real explosion happened on the final night of the tour. The audience packed the stands, cheering for their idols, while Eddie Van Halen staggered onto the stage, clearly intoxicated. Sammy Hagar later recalled, "It was the worst performance we ever did in our lives. Eddie played terribly." But Eddie didn't stop at just playing poorly. He decided to end the show in a way no one expected. In the middle of a song, Eddie suddenly stopped playing, and the audience stood in stunned silence as they saw him, tears streaming down his face, smash his guitar. Sammy Hagar stated that from that night on, he never spoke to Eddie or Alex Van Halen again. It seems some reunions are better left as fond memories. In 1978, Jefferson Airplane began their European tour to promote their new album, Earth. Everything seemed great until they arrived in Germany. Grace Slick, the band's powerful vocalist, was no stranger to parties. Usually, she could drink a few drinks and still sing well, but Germany was her Achilles heel. According to the band's biography by Jeff Tamarkin, everything about Germany seemed to make Grace worse, and this time was no exception. Before the show, Grace decided to warm up a bit, which actually meant drinking everything in sight. Imagine a vacuum cleaner, not sucking up dust, but instead inhaling every drop of alcohol nearby. That was Grace. Unsurprisingly, this led to a fierce outburst. Grace refused to prepare for the performance, likely because the room was spinning too fast for her to even put on her stage clothes. The band, probably used to Grace's wild antics by now, eventually dragged her onto the stage. When Grace Slick stepped onto the stage during a Jefferson Starship performance in Germany in 1978, she decided that singing wasn't her main priority. Instead, she came up with a brilliant idea to grab attention in a completely inappropriate way. Grace began mocking the German audience, sarcastically asking, "Who won the war?" and continued to use a vulgar expletive without any restraint. The performance descended into chaos, and Cynthia Bowman, the band's media liaison, described the incident as horrible, empty, awful, and dark. It's no surprise that this show was considered a major failure. Fast forward to 2016, Johnette Napolitano, the powerful voice of Concrete Blonde, was performing solo in Fort Worth, Texas. Fans were eager, ready to hear the distinctive voice that made hits like Joey and Tomorrow, Wendy unforgettable. But what they got was far from what they expected. Johnette's performance kicked off with an unforgettable mishap when she jumped in during the opening band set, as if crashing someone's birthday party and attempting to blow out the candles. This certainly didn't leave a good impression. When it finally came time for Johnette to take the stage, things took a turn for the worse. She started with her big hit, Joey, but it seemed like she had forgotten how to play it. One audience member described it as, she was offbeat, mixing up the lyrics, and adding random things that didn't belong. It felt like she had no memory of the song and was just strumming aimlessly. The audience, with remarkable patience, tried to help by singing along. However, this support couldn't save the situation. The performance felt more like a karaoke night, except the person holding the mic didn't know the lyrics. Then, in the middle of the next song, Johnette seemed to decide that standing was unnecessary. She grabbed the mic to steady herself, but then, bam! She collapsed right on stage. The performance lasted a mere 10 minutes before ending with Johnette lying flat on her back, nearly unconscious. The audience, already disappointed, was hit with another bad news. They were informed that there would be no refunds due to a technicality. Johnette had actually appeared on stage. It was a bizarre experience, much like ordering a pizza and only receiving the crust. Keith Moon was famous not only for his incredible drumming talent, but also for his penchant for causing chaos. One of his most iconic stunts was driving straight into a hotel pool during his own birthday party, and some reports claim he did this in the nude. His notorious use of drugs and alcohol became so well known that even other rock stars had to tell him to slow down a bit. Despite all this, Keith still managed to deliver top-notch performances on stage. However, on the night of November 19, 1973 in San Francisco, an unforgettable incident took place. Before the show, Keith decided to relax with a type of sedative he thought was ordinary, along with a little brandy. Unfortunately, those pills weren't just any sedative. They were likely tranquilizers meant for horses. As a result, when the performance began with "Won't Get Fooled Again," everything seemed fine at first. But it quickly became apparent that Moon's drumming was slowing down, and his movements became lethargic, like a wind-up toy running out of energy. The band, perhaps used to Moon's antics, quickly pulled him off stage and tried to revive him. After being revived with cold water or a cortisone shot, Keith Moon returned to the stage to perform Magic Bus, only to faint right behind his drum kit. In a final attempt to salvage the show, guitarist Pete Townshend asked if any audience members knew how to play drums, and that's when a 19-year-old named Scott Halpin, with an intense passion for rock music, got the chance to play with his favorite band in front of thousands of fans. Halpin gave it his all, but just imagine the pressure of having to replace Keith Moon, a legendary drummer known for his incredible talent and chaotic energy. This moment became one of the most bizarre and unforgettable in rock and roll history. In 1983, the U.S. festival was in full swing, organized by Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, with the ambition of making it a legendary music event. And who better to headline the rock day than Van Halen, with the fiery vocals of David Lee Roth. David Lee Roth, always the center of attention with his long blonde hair, tight spandex outfit, and shirtless chest like he stepped out of a cartoon rock star movie, seemed even more prominent than usual that day. The band had just finished a 3-month tour, and it was clear it had taken its toll. They arrived late to the event, leaving the audience waiting for a full 3 hours. But that wasn't even the worst part. Before the performance, David Lee Roth took part in a chaotic interview with MTV VJ Mark Goodman. Roth laughed at his own jokes, stammered through his words, and his answers sounded like a jumbled mess. When Van Halen finally took the stage, things only got worse. Roth, known for his powerful vocals and acrobatic moves, forgot the lyrics to the songs, and when he managed to remember them, his voice sounded as if he was singing underwater while chewing rocks. In his drunken state, Roth even mocked The Clash, a band that had already had a tense relationship with Van Halen. This led to a backstage altercation, resulting in the band having to pay a hefty fine and likely a major headache for Roth the next morning, if he could even remember any of it. In the early 2000s, the Rolling Stones embarked on their global 40 Licks World Tour. Within the group, Ron Wood, the guitarist known for his signature spiked hair, was always a standout figure. However, during one particularly memorable performance, Ron took the spotlight in a less than ideal way. When the band started playing their classic song, You Can't Always Get What You Want, things quickly took a turn for the worse. Ron stumbled on stage, not in the usual rock star swaying style, but more like a tree in a strong wind, about to fall at any moment. His fingers, typically swift on the strings, now seemed uncooperative, hitting the wrong notes and losing the rhythm. This made Keith Richards, known for his own famously reckless lifestyle, appear almost like a model of sobriety compared to Ron. The audience watched in anxious curiosity, wondering if Ron would be able to finish the song, if he'd remember how to play the guitar, or if he could even stay on his feet until the end. Somehow, Ron managed to get through the song, defying all laws of gravity and musical skill, and the show went on as if nothing had happened. At the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards, C.C. Deville of Poison delivered a performance that fans would rather forget. Before the performance, he had indulged in too much cocaine and nearly lost control. While the band was set to perform Unskinny Bop, CC began playing the wrong song just as the show went to commercial break. After a few minutes of playing off-key, he stopped and unexpectedly switched to Let It Play, a song that wasn't even on the set list. Bret Michaels, the lead vocalist of Poison, tried to salvage the situation by asking CC to play Talk Dirty to Me, but CC continued to spiral out of control, even failing to notice when his guitar strings were disconnected. After the performance, despite Bret's attempts to justify the chaos by calling it rock and roll, CC was immediately fired, marking the end of a night full of disorder. In 1997, Oasis performed in France amidst high expectations from the audience. However, the concert quickly turned into an unforgettable, chaotic spectacle. Liam Gallagher, the band's lead singer, took the stage clearly intoxicated. Wearing his signature parka and sunglasses, he stumbled and clung to the microphone for balance, while Oasis's hit songs turned into off-key, almost unrecognizable vocal renditions. Instead of interacting with the audience between songs, Liam repeatedly mumbled incoherent phrases and had sudden outbursts, leaving everyone feeling bewildered. Despite this, the band tried to maintain professionalism and continued the performance, but in the end, both the band and the audience were left wondering whether they had just witnessed a concert or the public unraveling of a legend. The French media certainly had plenty to discuss after this event. Jim Morrison, a symbol of wild spirit and freedom in 1960s rock music, was known for his iconic style, but even he couldn't escape moments of downfall. In 1968, during a European tour, the Doors performed in Amsterdam alongside Jefferson Airplane. Morrison, heavily intoxicated, couldn't wait for his turn and staggered onto the stage while the other band was still performing. He danced erratically before collapsing and passing out in the middle of the show. Morrison was then taken to the hospital to rest, and the Doors had to continue the performance without him. Ray Manzarek, the keyboardist, reluctantly took over the lead vocals, and the band managed to keep the concert going despite the absence of their iconic frontman. However, Morrison's condition continued to deteriorate, marking the beginning of a downward spiral that would eventually affect his career and legacy. In 1970, in New Orleans, Morrison caused another embarrassing incident. During a performance, he forgot the lyrics, sang off-key, and had to rely on the microphone to maintain his balance. As things continued to deteriorate, Morrison sat down on the drum platform and could no longer continue. Drummer John Densmore tried to wake him up, but Morrison became enraged and smashed the microphone before storming off the stage, ending the concert in chaos. This would be the final concert of the Doors with Morrison, and the band ultimately decided that they could no longer continue performing with him. In September 2012, at the iHeartRadio Festival in Las Vegas, the legendary punk rock band Green Day was preparing to perform. Billy Joe Armstrong, with his signature dark eyeliner and spiky hair, stepped onto the stage with the band members. The crowd was excited, singing along to their hit from 1994, Basket Case. Everything seemed normal until a message appeared on the screen. 1 minute remaining. Just 1 minute left for a band that had been performing since 1988. This sent Billy Joe into a meltdown. His face contorted with rage, Billy Joe abruptly stopped playing. What followed was an outburst of anger with words that couldn't be printed. "You give me 1 minute? Look at that screen!" he shouted, pointing at the display. The audience looked on in confusion as Billy Joe's fury escalated. He declared that he was not Justin Bieber, as if someone had mistaken him, a punk rocker with eyeliner, for a pop star. With his explosive punk rock style, Billy Joe decided to show the audience exactly what he could do with that 1 minute. The strings flew as he smashed his guitar to pieces. The crowd was stunned, wondering if this was part of the performance. It wasn't. With one last act of defiance, Billy Joe stormed off the stage, leaving the audience in shock and a thick, awkward silence hanging in the air. Later, it was revealed that he had been so intoxicated that he didn't even remember what had happened. This incident led to Billy Joe entering rehab, proving that sometimes just 1 minute is all it takes to change everything. In 2011, Amy Winehouse kicked off her comeback tour in Belgrade, Serbia, but her performance quickly turned into a disaster. Staggering onto the stage, Amy confused the audience by greeting them with "Hello, Athens." Despite Athens being the capital of Greece, not Serbia, she mumbled through the lyrics, stumbled, sat down, and even wandered off the stage in a drunken state. The audience, which numbered 20,000 people, couldn't believe their eyes and began booing relentlessly. Moby, a fellow artist on the bill, described how the boos from the crowd were louder than the music itself. Despite this, Amy's band continued playing, trying to maintain some semblance of order. This performance would go on to become Amy Winehouse's final show, marking the end of a musical icon who, tragically, couldn't overcome her personal struggles. During a performance in Sydney, Australia, when the Beach Boys took the stage, Carl Wilson, the youngest member of the group, shocked the audience with an appearance that was unlike his usual self. Carl, who was one of the most stable and reliable members in a band known for its drama, stepped on stage with glazed eyes and a staggered walk. The audience couldn't believe their eyes as they saw Carl, who was known for his angelic voice and exceptional guitar skills, in such a condition. As the band began to play, it was clear that Carl wasn't fully alert. His once sharp guitar skills had become sloppy, as if a child was randomly strumming the strings. His sweet, clear voice now came out in a chaotic mess, causing the other band members to glance at each other with concern. Though they were accustomed to wild moments, Carl's performance tonight was something entirely different. The audience watched in bewilderment as the performance unfolded like a slow-motion car crash, but with beach music playing in the background. Carl tried to introduce the song "Good Vibrations," but ended up saying "Goo Vibrations" instead. By the end of the show, the positive vibes in the room had shifted to negative emotions, leaving a lasting, unforgettable impression. On January 18, 1986, The Replacements, the famous college rock band, made their debut on national television on Saturday Night Live, SNL. However, their performance turned out to be not just memorable, but a full-blown disaster. Before the show began, the band ran into trouble because the SNL studio didn't have any alcohol, which they relied on to get in the right mood. Fortunately, a sound technician rescued them by secretly smuggling in enough liquor to get the entire band drunk before they stepped on stage. When the band started performing Bastards of Young, the show quickly turned into chaos. Lead vocalist Paul Westerberg, instead of holding the microphone, abandoned it halfway through the song, causing his vocals to nearly disappear. Bassist Tommy Stinson, heavily intoxicated, staggered around the stage, barely appearing in the frame. However, the biggest source of chaos came from guitarist Bob Stinson. As Westerberg nervously wondered whether Bob would miss the solo, he shouted, "Come on! Underscore, underscore the censors." And not stopping there, Bob decided to finish the song with a dramatic flip, but his pants tore mid-air, unintentionally giving the audience a full moon sighting on a Saturday night. The chaotic performance ended with the Replacements destroying their hotel room after the show, an act that would have made even the legendary drummer Keith Moon proud. The damage bill was sent directly to SNL creator Lorne Michaels. Naturally, after this event, the Replacements were never invited back to perform on the show. In 2011 in Vancouver, 3,000 fans of Ween had paid $50 each to see the quirky rock band's performance. However, little did they know that Gene Ween would deliver a legendary lesson in how not to perform on stage. The show began with an instrumental track where the band played tightly, but Gene was fumbling with a tambourine as if he were solving a math equation. When he started singing, his voice was off-key and incomprehensible, prompting the band to step in and take over some of the vocals. As Gene returned to the mic, he continued to butcher the lyrics, then decided to sit down before lying flat on the stage like a true rock icon. The next part of the performance went even further downhill as Gene sang completely off-key, ruining the song Spirit of '76. While adjusting his guitar mid-song, the rest of the band walked off stage, leaving Gene standing alone. Realizing he was by himself, he asked, "Hey, where's the band?" Before stumbling off the stage, leaving the audience to witness one of the most iconic collapses in rock history. On a regular night at Headliners, a club in Toledo, Ohio, the audience was eagerly waiting for Puddle of Mudd to take the stage. However, they had no idea they were about to witness an event that would go down in rock and roll history. Wes Scantlin, the lead singer of Puddle of Mudd, stumbled onto the stage, and after 4 songs, the rest of the band walked off, leaving Wes alone. Drunk, he admitted to the audience that he was too intoxicated to continue, but still decided the show must go on. For the next half hour, Wes staggered around the stage, using profanity and dropping his guitar repeatedly, while the audience threw objects at him. The performance turned into a bizarre improvisation rather than an actual musical show. Eventually, Wes gave up and retreated to the dressing room, leaving the disappointed crowd behind. However, he was arrested for disorderly conduct and had to spend the night in jail. A few days later, he explained that he had drunk too much and couldn't play and sing at the same time. He mentioned that in over 400 performances over the past 4 years, this was the only one that didn't go smoothly. It seems Wes has quite a unique definition of a bad day at the office. In 2002, when Creed was at the peak of their popularity, fans in Chicago eagerly awaited a performance of Arms Wide Open. However, what they witnessed instead was a disaster. Scott Stapp, the lead vocalist of the band, took the stage looking like someone who had just come off a week-long bender. From the moment he opened his mouth, he couldn't remember the lyrics, instead mumbling incoherently and uttering nonsensical phrases. This was just the beginning of a disastrous performance, as Stapp repeatedly disappeared from the stage, leaving the band members to extend solos. When he returned to the stage, Stapp often collapsed onto the floor, at times seeming to pass out. The band kept playing to maintain the atmosphere, attempting to pretend that everything was fine. The audience, who had come to hear hits like My Sacrifice and Higher, witnessed a regrettable public meltdown. The performance was so bad that a group of fans even filed a lawsuit against the band due to Stapp's drunken state, though the lawsuit was later dismissed. This performance marked the beginning of the end for Creed, with the band breaking up just 2 years later. While Stapp eventually sobered up and rejoined the band later on, the memory of his collapse in Chicago still haunts those who were there that night. On a warm June night in 2006 in Tampa, Florida, fans gathered to see Vince Neil, the legendary lead singer of Mötley Crüe, perform a solo show. With his long blonde hair and leather pants, Vince looked every bit the rock god, or at least he should have. But as he stepped onto the stage, it was clear something was wrong. Vince stumbled, looking as though he might fall at any moment. From the very first note, he seemed to forget the lyrics to every song, mumbling incoherently and occasionally ending phrases with a yeah or a woo. In an unexpected turn of events, John Corabi, the lead singer of opening band Rat, was invited to the stage to lend a hand. Corabi and Vince Neil, though still stumbling, attempted to muddle through Live Wire, a hit by Mötley Crüe. After Corabi left the stage, Vince continued on alone for a few more minutes before the performance ended with a sense of sympathy from the crowd. When asked about the disastrous performance, Vince casually explained, "I was pretty drunk. I tripped, fell off the stage. Sometimes that happens." He seemed unfazed by what others would view as a major career setback. In 2002 at Madison Square Garden, New York, Billy Joel and Elton John teamed up for a highly anticipated concert that promised an unforgettable night of rock music. After an energetic performance with duets between the two legends, things began to take a turn when Billy Joel took the stage for a solo performance. Although it had been announced that Billy had a cold, the audience was unprepared for what was about to unfold. Billy, known for his strong voice and confident demeanor, suddenly became unrecognizable. He mumbled and rambled on about the Liberty Bell and World War II battles, leaving the audience confused about what was happening. Billy continued to sing in a strained manner, his hands slamming the piano keys randomly, producing a chaotic, dissonant sound. The bizarre moment reached its peak when Elton John returned to the stage. While Elton played flawlessly, Billy seemed to be performing as if he was singing an entirely different song. After the show, Billy Joel entered rehab, hinting that his cold might have been a side effect of alcohol abuse. On September 24, 2013, at the Perth Arena in Australia, fans eagerly awaited Rihanna's performance as part of her Diamonds World Tour. They anticipated a night filled with powerful vocals and lively tunes, but instead, they witnessed an entirely different kind of show. When Rihanna took the stage, she was no longer her usual confident self. She stumbled as she walked, her eyes appeared glazed, and she seemed uncertain about what was happening around her. Her usually clear voice became muddled and hard to understand, as if she were singing underwater. The dance moves, which were typically precise and sensual, now looked like she was trying to chase an invisible swarm of bees. She staggered and had to lean on the backup dancers to keep her balance, at times nearly falling off the stage, but fortunately, a guitarist was there to catch her in time. As the performance continued, the situation didn't improve. During an energetic song, Rihanna suddenly stopped in the middle and ran off stage. The band kept playing while she was absent, and when she returned, her face was pale and her voice was weaker. Many speculated that she might have run off due to nausea, a recurring issue in some of her previous performances. Nevertheless, Rihanna attempted to finish the show, though her vocals and dance moves were more disjointed than usual. After the show, social media buzzed with speculation about the reasons behind Rihanna's odd performance, with some suggesting jet lag, while others thought she might have been partying too hard before hitting the stage. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the unexpected moments of live music performances. Sometimes, even the most talented artists face challenges and moments of fatigue. While it may not have been perfect, it's the authenticity and effort they put into their work that creates memorable stories. Let these experiences remind us that everyone faces difficult times, and more importantly, they always need empathy and support from their audience. Thank you for following along and sharing in this meaningful conversation.